it was a small little window. Like literally it was a microscopic little hole where I had this opportunity to realize that maybe I didn't have it. And in that window, there was a small little glimmer of hope. And I got up and I said to my wife, I don't got this. I need help. And that little moment right there was a spark that really unraveled really what comes in the next 6.5 years. Every business, and we're talking about business development, is all about one thing. Every business is the same model. You come up with an idea and then you expand it and organize. In order to grow, you have to step out on the thin branches of life, right? Those things that you don't know. I have a hard time. My ego wants to tell me I got this, right? And my ego wants to defend itself. Watch out for the fear, anger, and anxiety. Just stay away from checking out, right? If we can help our other brothers in that same spot, stay as conscious as we can.
If you're in business, you know that not every day is going to be a great day. And if you're lucky, the business you're in actually serves a passion in your life. And so it makes those challenging days all the worth it. But there will be those days that will challenge us. And how we respond to those challenges can mean all the difference for our staff and our customers. Now, today, my guest has transformed a simple painting job into a construction industry leader. And he shares his wisdom on leadership, what leadership looks like today, the future, and so much more. Now, in the meantime, if you're interested in raising your standards as a father, husband, and entrepreneur, then I encourage you to participate in our Band of Brothers group mentorship program. We're a group of ordinary guys working towards living extraordinary lives. You can find all this information at the Awakened Man Training Academy at members.theawakenedman.net. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awakened Man movement and your host, Alan DeMonso. Let me ask you a question before we get started. What has been the biggest thing that is preventing your business from moving forward right now? Now, while you could say it's economy, it's government, regulations, etc., and all these things pale really in comparison to our ability to lead our company and work through those challenges. And it takes courage, persistence to see the business through challenging times. And so today, my guest shares his story, and he believes he will need to be able to what we need to do to lead others for our businesses into the future. Now, allow me to introduce my guest. Anthony is a founder of the CD Group, the national commercial construction firm that has built over 1 million square feet of retail space, working with some of the largest brands. And Anthony has a true passion for finding out what makes people successful in life and business. He's also a bit of a futurist in that he loves diving into the conversation about what the future holds for us personally and professionally. And that includes adventures that shape our journey. Welcome to the show, Anthony. How are things, brother?
Awesome, brother. I'm so glad to be on the show. I love your show. I'm an avid listener, and I'm just grateful to be on the show tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, and as a listener, you know very well what this very first question is going to come out as. And, in my men's work, we always talk about all of us being on a hero's journey or a hero's quest. So tell us about a particular time in your life when you were challenged, maybe felt lost or faced a challenge. You knew things had to change. What did you do? And how did that experience shape you into the man you are today?
Alan, I think that's right. Each one of us men face a spot in life where we either take the step or we keep going down that road that's not working. About 7 years ago, a little over 6.5 years ago, I woke up one morning and realized life wasn't working. Right. I was 48 years old. I'd been drinking and drugs, and I'd had multiple relationships and kids. Right. I had gone through some real ups and here back then I used to laugh at everybody. I'm like, I could dance with the devil. I had such a resistance to changing, and it was such a, I can dance. I got this. And I would my addictions and life were in a spot where I couldn't see that I was ruled by an addiction. And that morning, that small little, it was a small little window. Like literally it was a microscopic little hole where I had this opportunity to realize that maybe I didn't have it. And in that window, there was a small little glimmer of hope. And I got up and I said to my wife, I don't got this. I need help. And that little moment right there was a spark that really unraveled really what becomes in the next 6.5 years.
Unbelievable. And to have that awakening really, and as what we talk about here at the Awakened Man, is that moment in life that finally it hits us, right? And I believe there's always spirit pushing us, nudging us. And sometimes it becomes a gentle nudge, and other times we need a hit in the side of the head like a 2x4. And however we get there, it's not really important how we get there, man, but we got to get there. We got to wake up and make a change. And so what I really liked about learning about your story is that when you got started in this construction business, you were doing projects for another firm, if I understand correctly.
Yeah.
You guys figured out how you could do these discovery zone playgrounds in under 7 days. And it makes me think that whatever you were up against, you figured a few things out. So tell me how it is that you got to that point and how that your whole work has transformed.
I look back on, you look back over your life and you see the little steps that get you to where you are. Even today, I have a hard time looking forward, right? As I look forward to know what I want to be when I grow up, I laugh, right? Because there's such an abundant world. There's so many opportunities that are coming at us. But when I look backwards, I started my career working for a boiler room, just like you said. It's just like you watch any of these movies, Wolf of Wall Street. I worked in one of those boiler rooms, and very early on, I worked for a guy who taught me how to make sales. Right, it was great. He literally had me on the phone for 200 or 300 phone calls every single day, and he would tell me, "You can't put the phone down. Just touch the button with your finger and dial the next one." And I would learn that you could use your voice and you could really create relationships in the way that you talk to people. And I remember the first time someone sent me a check for $20,000 over the phone. I'm like, oh my God, I never met this woman. And she sent me a check for $20,000. And that was a great thing to learn, that I could build relationships in language. And then I started a painting company when the stock market crashed. And it was tough. We all kind of went broke in the stock market in '87, where it just was a tough time. But I went out and started a little painting company, and I went back to school and I learned how to paint houses. And I would be really good at being clean cut, being something that someone could look at and go, all right, you're a trustworthy guy. And I would dress the part, act the part, and do the part. Now, even though I didn't know how to run a business at the time, I barely even knew how to, I was, every business, and we're talking about business development, is all about one thing. Every business is the same model. You come up with an idea and then you expand it and organize. Every business is the same. Like, look, literally every business that we operate, every time I meet with a business leader or an entrepreneur, that's the mantra. It's expand and organize. And that's where, I really started that. And, as a small painter, we figured out how to paint houses and become very efficient, how to create a system around it. And that's really what we did. We figured out we could pressure clean the house the day before. Then we'd go in and we'd tape off every single item. Like if it wasn't getting painted, it had tape on it. And we'd spend hours and hours and hours and rolls and rolls and rolls of tape and paper, and we would tape everything off, dig it along the base of the house, and then we'd get our sprayers out. The next morning we'd come in, and we had a team of 4 guys, and they were just great. So they would start with a sprayer, and one guy would back roll behind it, and the deal was, if you could get around the house fast enough to catch the roller, you could paint them. Right. So it kind of created a little bit of a competition. So guys would, kind of get around the house and giddy up. And then by the time you get the second one around, it was hot enough in Florida where you could start doing trim work. And then that became a system. And we showed, we gave customers a value, and it was something they could count on. The prices were great. And then we did the same thing with our friends. And somewhere in there, I got a commercial project. Right. I went to work for a general contractor who kind of took advantage of me. Right. It was a Banana Republic. I don't remember Banana Republic, the store for the clothing store. But at the time it had like 30 or 40, maybe 35 different colors of white, off-white, antique white, sunshine white. There were all these different whites. And I'm like, well, it's all white. It can't be that hard. I gave it, I gave him a really cheap price, and the contractor's like, yeah, I'll take you. And, I lost my shirt. But the best part about it was I didn't lose my shirt. What I did is I learned how to have insurance. I learned how to show up on a commercial job site. I learned to figure out how much paint I was going to use. The truth was, even though I didn't make any money on that, I learned. And learning from that contractor was great. And that was, again, organizing, right? Expand, get into commercial work. Now you have to organize. Now you have to figure that out. And then I got into Discovery Zone, the playgrounds for kids. And back then, those things were all different colors. The ductwork would be blue, and the fire, the sprinkler lines would be red, and every wall was a primary color. And I just figured out that if I took the all the material and I painted it out in the parking lot right before, you imagine this: you're in Florida, and the higher you go, the hotter it is. There's, on a construction site, there's no AC running, right? And it's hot up there, right? Because you get the sun beating on the roof, and you're up there trying to paint all the ductwork and stuff. You pass out, right? So I figured out if you painted it all on the ground, and then when they put it up in the air, all you had to do is touch it up. And that was revolutionary. Some guy saw me do that, and he's like, "Oh, this is genius." So he invited me up to Chicago, and he offered me a job, and I went to work for Discovery Zone. And for a bunch of years, I built those playgrounds. And again, I learned how to put systems together, right? And these playgrounds at the time were some really rich guy who owned Discovery Zone. He sold it to the guys from who bought Discovery Zone, and they said to me, "Anthony, we got to go much faster." This guy would build the playgrounds. He had a mansion in Kansas City. He would build these things in front of his front yard, right? And he had this amazing house. He had a basketball. It was the first house I ever saw that had a basketball court in his living room, right? It's kind of a unique man. And I got to spend some time with him, and it would take him, 4 or 5 weeks to build one. And my bosses were like, "Hey, you can't do that. We need to build, 60 of these a year. We need a couple of them a week." Right. You got to figure this out. So we figured out how to make little kits of parts, and we went to the manufacturers, and we had them build those kits so that we could deliver them to job sites and put them together a lot faster. Again, it's like one of those things where you expanded an idea, right? Then you had to organize, right? Now we had to go to the manufacturers and make these little kits, and then how to have them delivered so that each playground could be unique and work. And again, then that started, I went on to other brands like Discovery or Blockbuster Video, and then Boston Market and Einstein Bagels. I worked for all those companies, and I realized something. I got a call from friends, and I said, "Hey, we're going to start this little company called CDO Group." And I was like, "Well, what do we do with CDO Group?" And he goes, "Look, we're going to do the same thing we do for companies inside. We're going to do it outsourcing." And I realized that companies were out there buying cows to get milk. A company like Blockbuster Video shouldn't have a construction department. They should be renting videos. Or Boston Market shouldn't have a construction department. They should be selling chicken. Yeah. So we offered that stuff on an outsourcing basis. And that's how CDO began. And that was about a little over 25 years ago.
Wow, that's incredible. And the reason I wanted to really get into this story is because there's so many lessons to be learned there. And I think as we have entrepreneurs that listen to the show as well, and I think, and those that are aspiring and wanting to get into business, what I take away, and notes that I put down here, is that you weren't afraid to learn. At some point, was that ever an issue for you where you were afraid to ask a question or to learn? And if that was the case for you, what was the catalyst for you to start to shift and change that?
Alan, it's a great conversation, right? Because in order to grow, you have to step out on the thin branches of life, right? Those things that you don't know, right? And as we step out to those thin branches, right, you feel a little stupid, right? There's parts of my life where I really don't know how to do them. And, it's gotten worse the further I've grown up in the ladder, right? As I've built bigger companies and bigger experiences, for me, I have a hard time. My ego wants to tell me I got this, right? And my ego wants to defend itself. And it's really a shame because I get in everybody's way, right? I get in, when I walk around acting like I know stuff, it's not real great because people get real frustrated with you. You hire these great people to come work for you. And then, you keep acting like you've always have and not willing to change. They get kind of bored and tired of working. They want to move on somewhere else.
Well, and that's so true, right? And it's about having the, and having the ability to understand that we can ask questions, even though we may have the position of boss, doesn't mean we have all the answers. As a matter of fact, we have fewer answers because there's other things going on, and we aren't necessarily in the weeds, as we like to say in my past career in hospitality, being in the weeds. We don't necessarily know what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, or what our staff are dealing with and our customers, and so to be able to step back. Now, did you have any mentors along the way that helped shape your philosophy and your mindset? Or is this stuff that you came up with out of books or taking classes? How did that all come for you?
Well, for me, it's you have to get outside help. A bunch of years back, I had this great woman. Her name was Carol. And Carol came to me one day. She goes, She was telling me a story. She goes, like, my granddaughter comes into my bedroom, and she has this big clump of necklaces she got out of my jewelry box. And she takes this big clump of necklaces, and she goes, and she's pulling on it, trying to get the necklaces out, and they keep getting tighter and tighter. And Karen goes, Karen, let me see that for a second. And she takes it, and she holds on to it, and she kind of pulls it a little bit. And she realizes, she goes, you know what? We need some outside help. And she lays it down on a cloth, and she goes over and gets a magnifying glass. She goes, hey, look, it's got a magnifying glass. And she looks at it really good, and she gets a couple of T-pins, and she kind of spreads it out a little bit. And she looks at it, she realizes there's one of them that's kind of easy to take out. So she takes the easy one out first. And she goes, the second one, it was a lot harder to take out, right? And the third one's a lot harder to take out. By the time she got to the fourth and fifth one, they kind of fell apart. Well, I feel like that's how it is for me. I need outside help, right? The problem I have is with my brain is it wants to justify its behavior. If you look through all my business, for the last 6 years, I've had amazing growth. Amazing. We've doubled our numbers. My second year of sobriety, we made more money in the second year of sobriety than I did the 10 years before that. Wow. Now, a big part of that for me is that I didn't realize that as a man, I carried around, you ever watch Santa Claus? He's got that big bag of toys on him, right? I carried this big bag of crap around with me. It was this crap. It was like literally childhood stories, pain, trouble. I was weighed down. I was exhausted. I was always frustrated. I couldn't see. I had no clarity of vision. It was frustrating. And I finally sat down with some good therapists and some good business coaches and some, to me today, I've got great doctors, great lawyers. I've got a great team of people around me. It takes a village to raise Anthony. And I love that because today they can look at the way I eat, the way that I sleep, the way that I act. How do I work out? Right? If I want to be healthy, if I want to show up and build a great company, I've got to have the energy to do that. Yeah. If I want to show up to build a great company, I can't be sitting in my boyhood, childhood pain and try to lead leaders, right? I've got to show up with some clarity of vision, and all those little items take some work. So I think that when you ask me if I got mentors, I need a team of them. They surround me, and I'm constantly looking for better and better mentors that can bring me another part of me that I can work on. And when I practice that principle in all of my life, it seems like it does a pretty good job of helping me grow.
Yeah, I would suggest that it's doing that as well, for sure. And what I like and note that I made here was about you were looking for clarity of vision. And, I think that's so important for a lot of us guys. We have an idea or a vision when we were, in our teens and in our early 20s of what we want to do and how life is. And then we get into life and stuff starts to happen, right? We get married, we have kids, we're going up we're buying homes, buying cars, lots of stuff is going on. And then we fall into the daily routine of life, and we end up at times sleepwalking through it, and we lose that vision, or that that crystal ball gets cloudy. It's kind of like the headlights on an old car, right? The mirror the glass just isn't as crisp as it used to be, and so it's not quite as bright. And because you spend the time to clean that and do that work, you've been able to regain a clarity of vision. And like you said, second year sobriety. And by the way, congratulations on that hard work. That is powerful and impressive work, my friend. But the amount of business change is just because of that clarity. Sorry, go ahead.
That was a catalyst, right? Without that part of it, right? I couldn't smoke pot and drink every day. I couldn't do those things. And all the rest of the work, right? If that's what ends up happening is I get the efforts, right? I'll sit and watch TV all night. I can eat more bonbons. I can have another cocktail. All of a sudden the efforts kick in, and that to me is where you can't build, you can't change, right? When I'm stuck in the efforts, there's I don't have a shot at this. Today when I'm not there, I may not have every day perfect. Like there are days where it's something happens, or construction for the last couple of years because of COVID has been just really a lot of fun, and we've grown a lot, but it's a lot harder, and it's not always fun. But at least when I'm sober, the next days always seem to be just a little bit better.
Yeah.
Right. They don't seem to go backwards. Just see if they get lean one way or the other day. Like the next day turns out, okay, we can deal with it, right? We can see it. But I want to go back to what you're talking about. You know, we when we were young, we had a vision of something. I have a real belief that we push into this time. We choose to come here. I don't know where we are before we get here, but I always have this sense that I have a mission here. And I spent my first, I don't know, maybe even my 48 years, like I've got this dog, and when I let my dog off the leash, she runs around and sniffs everything. Right. And she's wild. She's a beautiful dog. I love this dog. But I feel a lot like that's how it was for my first 48 years. I kind of ran around, kind of sniffing that and eating pizza and, whatever. Yeah. And now today I realize I have some work I want to do. I'd like to create something better for the world. I like to give back to other men, right? This work, when we do work together as other men, there's something really beautiful about men's work. And it takes a little something to get there. And I think that sobriety was my first catalyst that helped that out.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And just before we got on, hit the record button, we were just talking about, you just had a group of men over at your place and doing some men's work. And so let's talk a little bit about that. How is that going for you? Are you finding fulfillment in that? And what was the catalyst for you starting some men's work?
Yeah, I had some great friends that I met through some 12-step work. And, what I really notice is that we men are now in a time of life where it's more confusing than ever to be a man, right? Our definitions of what we were and who we were supposed to be have changed so much in this last 15 years, right? And it's continued to change. We used to be the breadwinners. We used to be the head of the family. Today, that's changing, right? Our roles and what we say and how we act are being questioned every single day. And part of that, it needed to happen, right? We're in this now time, we're called to be better men than ever. And it's time to step up. But I don't know about you, but that takes a little bit, right? I remember the first time I went to a group, someone invited me to a daddy-daughter weekend. And it was this group called MKP, Mankind Project. And they do a daddy-daughter weekend. This is a great group, right? This great group. And they had a little breakout where the dads had a round circle. And they were talking about where you feel vulnerable with your daughter. And I was like, really, I was kind of like, sometimes my daughters, I have a couple daughters, sometimes they can get really they can get really cranky, and they use the bitch word, right? I said, they can be really, that way with me. And, I don't understand. Sometimes I hate my daughter. And a man raised his hand and said, ouch. He goes, hey, we don't use that word when we talk about women. Today we're called to use different language, right? In the language that we use, the way that we, even in the pains that we have, the language that we use defines the men that we would get to become. And it was hard for me to understand that, but that was the best lesson I'd ever gotten, right? It was the start of a great way of going, my life gets created by the language I use, right? How I talk about myself and I talk about others and how do I need to walk around talk like a sailor all the time? Not that I'm pure as snow, but right today I try to practice, how can I speak creatively without bashing others? Yeah. And that takes a lot of, so I found that men's group to go to that weekend. And in that weekend, I saw men be vulnerable and hold me accountable for a higher level. And I loved it. I was like, I want more of that. I want to be part of a place where we work on each other to be better men. And it felt great. Right. It felt great. And that weekend, I've done it ever since, that was 6 years ago. And ever since that weekend, we've done it every year. And both my daughters love to go, and we write love letters. We have these great weekends and we look forward to it. And, that led me to MKP, which was a weekend where men go and you kind of become part of a men's group, and a great group of men that have some great practices and some great languages. Not only that, just some great processes to learn about that big red bag of crap that I was carrying around, right? The big red bag of shame and guilt. And they had some great processes where I could go and work on some of those with other men. Yeah. And what was great was other men were vulnerable as an example. I really got, for me, it was great to meet brave other men who taught me how to be vulnerable. And the question really became is what kind of life was I wanting to lead, and how willing was I to be really vulnerable? And in that vulnerability became an opening that I never imagined I could create. And, and that, was a gift. And I would not have gotten that had I not had other brave men lead by example. And today I feel like that's where we're called to be, right? As you do your podcast, this work that you do with your podcast, and the great people you have on, every week, the work is phenomenal, right? You can hear that we men are thirsty for relatedness to each other, right? The meeting we had last night was a different men's group called Men's Living, and Men's Living is another great men's group, and we had a great meeting last night on sex, love, and intimacy. And to have a circle of 12 guys in a circle talk vulnerably about sex, love, and intimacy. I mean, I was just so impressed by men who've never been in circle before, men who've never been part of a men's group. There was probably 2 or 3 of them that had never been part of a men's group before. And they just stepped right into it and went and got vulnerable. And you could feel how thirsty it was, like a sponge wanting water. How we want to do this together. And ultimately, don't we want to be part of something where men and our friends know us, not the story that we're trying to pretend to be?
Yeah.
Like when you know me and still love me, like my good, my bad, my ugly. That's what I get from great men's groups, right? Where I can bring that together, and then they can challenge me, right? To do some great work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what really drew me to doing men's work. I'm going through, Paul, I won't tell all my story in this episode, but I needed to find a place, and they're in the location that I am here in Winnipeg, Canada. There isn't anything for men. And so when I saw that void, I just knew that there needed to be a place for guys to come in where they can be free of shame, blame, and judgment. And you said the same thing with the Mankind Project, but it didn't mean you're not being held accountable. That's just how to do that, right? And it's about doing it in a different way. And I just think that, much like how the old way of, I'll call it the old way of, getting together in a locker room, and we play lots of hockey. You're in Chicago, lots of hockey, right? So you've always got men's leagues and all that, and the beer leagues, but it's a different kind of conversation in that locker room than it is when you're getting around in a circle of men and you're talking about some really deep stuff. And I think that's really the catalyst. And I think we are shifting the perspective of, the paradigm of being that, of being the leader, and being the breadwinner and all that. While that still has some value, it's not the most important pieces of what masculinity is. There's lots of other pieces that are starting to bubble up. And we talked just before we get on the show. I'm a really big fan of the work that Sacred Sons is doing in the US, and, and really helping men to understand and getting tied into into understanding their emotions and where that's coming from. And every man group, there's lots of places that are doing it. And I just think it's so important that you guys got to find the right voice for you. And that's why I'm doing this work. It's why you're doing your work. So at some point, it's going to connect for somebody. And as long as we keep moving forward, I think we're going to make a huge changes in the world today.
Well, what's fun is so as we look back in time, right? So let's talk a little bit about where we're going as a world. If we look backwards a little bit, when we went from horses to cars, let's say that's 1x, right? The world changed 1x. Right, we went from no phones to phones. Let's say that's 1x. Let's say no radios to radios, 1x. Right, all of a sudden TVs come in. Maybe that's 1.5x. Right, in the 80s when the computers came by, let's call that 10x. Right, all of a sudden we got computers. That's changing. Today let's say that we're at 15x. Well, what's about to happen? Where the world's really going? The amount of change that's coming. On my podcast, The Future Factor, we talk about AI and where the world's going. Really, what's about to happen to the world, it becomes 1,000x, right? Maybe even 10,000x. The amount of change that's going to happen. Now, it's really easy that when something like that comes by, I can check out. Right, I could just get overwhelmed and be like, that's it, it's too much. I can't take it. If I can't figure it all out, I'm not getting. If I can't get any of it figured out, I'm not doing anything. Right, I could check out and I can go to booze and alcohol and hide my head in the sand. But today, the amount of great things that are about to happen, the abundance of life, the places that we can change, if we can stay out of the fear, the opportunities for our kids, our daughters, our sons, right? When we can look at them and go, hey, if we can be an example of staying emotionally sober, right? And staying in that space where we're conscious, maintain our consciousness, not be run by my fears, anxieties, all that stuff that chased me and checked me out, right? Because I can check out. I mean, fear may be my favorite dope. right? I don't drink or do drugs anymore, but I can get in fear. And today that might be my drug of choice. It might be, I get scared. Oh my God, if I get scared and, if I could take away my money or my sex or relationship, and I get in fear, I can check out. It blinds me. And today, if I can stay conscious, no matter what comes down the road, right? If I can work on that, this next part of life is going to be the most abundant opportunities we've ever seen. The world has always been full of these abundance. And that's what I really want. I think now is our time as men to gather each other's arms and say, look, let's work on this together and really bring in a level of consciousness that we've never had before. Yeah. Because each man I know, every man I've ever met, we all want the same thing. We want better lives for our families. We want better lives for ourselves. I've really never met a malevolent man. I've met some men who are scared and some people act weird. But truth is, when I reach across and I meet other men, we're similar. We all have in our hearts the ability to work together. That's one of the greatest parts about being men is that we have really huge hearts, and we want better for our communities. We have this king energy that really does do a great job of seeing our realms in a different way than even the women in our lives. Hey, look, they're great. They have their energy, but to be able to see the whole realm and how to support each part of that, I think is a gift that men have. And when we can stay conscious there, that's the part that I think the work that you do helps guide me. I was listening to your podcast the other day about, I forgot the guy's name. It's about food, checking out with food. And, I mean, how many times have I got into that game, right? That podcast really helped me. And I've been working my behind off on being conscious about what I'm eating since I've listened to that podcast. Like it's helped me to just, just notice it, like how I can swoop by in a second when I'm bored or anxiety, and I can just, right. And then, or sugars, right? My addictions of sugars, right? Sometimes I don't even know the things that drive me. So as other men show me those examples like you do, I think that's the gift that we have for each other.
Absolutely. And I think the key about, one of the keys of that is that we have these behaviors that pull us away from wanting our ego, not wanting us to face our fears and face the shadow aspect of it. And you were talking a little bit about king energy and that. And I think, we do some shadow work as well in my group and for me, what that means is really looking at that thing, that part of us that we just don't like, in the moment that we get emotionally triggered, one of the places that we go to real quick is what's behind that. And, what is that? Is there a shadow aspect there that mirror, was somebody just put a mirror in front of you? And a lot of times that mirror can be our spouses because they're a reflection of what's going on inside of us, because we forget how we're showing up for them. And then they are perfect mirror for us to be able to learn and grow. And you have daughters, and that's another way for us to show up as men, and how we want to, right? I have 2 boys. But if you had 2 daughters, and I've interviewed other guys, they just talk about, I just want them to know that they are enough as themselves, that they don't need to have somebody else, a man, to tell them that they're of any value, that they have that within them. So they grow up strong in character. And you can only do that as a father if you've done your work, and because you're doing that work with Mankind and all these other programs, it helps us develop and really grow as men. And then we're modeling it, right? And we model that. And I think that's the greatest way for us to really start to shift and move this paradigm away from the way it used to be, where it was all about brawn and grit is important. It's one of the virtues that we follow, but it's also balancing that with the kindness aspect of it. It's about bringing that lover and that magician energy into our lives that helps us really sync that in together, so that when we are in our king energy in the fullest, that we're decisive, yet we're not overbearing, right? We make better decisions, we make better choices, and we can see much more clearly.
It's fun being able to bounce between our different archetypes is a gift, right? I also have 2 sons. One's 30 and one's 20, and as I watch them on their journeys, they're both in different parts of their journey, and I honor that, right? Like each one of us has to go through our journey, and I want to lead by example, but sometimes I want to shield them from the pain they're going to go through, and but I know that never worked for me, right? I had to go through, what I had to go through. And as you know, maybe the gift is just being there. Today I spent a lot of time really seeing my kids, right?
Yeah.
Really seeing them. And in
Love
fact,
that.
I had it written on my hand until yesterday. I was, really stop and see my kids even deeper today, right? Just
Mm.
see them, right? I think that's a lot of the gift is I can't, I'm not going to be able to take away their learnings. They need to learn, but if I can see them and they know that they're being seen,
Yeah.
right? Maybe that's the gift is that, what might some of the behaviors be? And I love when you talk about the shadow, like knowing that, right? Knowing that I have this shadow energy, this thing that's kind of working against me, right? Or trying to bring this other life that I really don't want, but it kind of wants, right? It's, my shadow energy will have me destruct my whole life. It doesn't want to kill me. It just wants to make me really miserable, right? That shadow energy really, to me, feels like it wants to, take me and everybody else around it. It wants to make, unrelate to others. And, as I look at that shadow today, if I can get that shadow around front of me and I can see it and oh, isn't that cute? That's maybe that's a little boy inside coming out, or maybe that shadow energy that's coming there. And we have more than ever. What's amazing about where we are in this time of life is we have language that our fathers didn't have. My
Mm.
father's never talked. My grandfather never talked like this. He had no idea. They just thought, shut up and be tough.
Yeah.
And they all wonder why they were dying at such a young age. They were tired, exhausted, why they had to act up and drink. They didn't have the language to articulate this stuff.
Yeah.
And as we now move into this next era together, and it's getting faster for sure. It's going to get faster, and we start to be able to language a little bit better. It feels like to me that's the spot that we need to be for each other as men, and that will lead to to the women in our lives, and even the mailman in our life. The mailman comes in our front door, lives a better life because we do our own work. We as men do our work, and then it kind of emanates out from there, which is a big gift.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is our work to do. And so, the work is in the wound, and the moment that we can recognize that and start to do that work, then life for us changes, and not just for us, but for those that are closest to us, and it expands. My belief is that, we do the work on ourselves to grow the depth of our families, bring the idea of the family back together. The idea of the family then grows out to our communities. That brings the communities back together, where you actually know your neighbor's name. You can go across and say hi. You help each other on projects, and it's that type of a growth that we really need to see, instead of all these things that's going on in social media and in politics today. And we just have to find time to disconnect from that and really come back to what truly matters, and that's the people that are in our lives that we can have the most profound effect. So this is kind of leading to really an important question I want to ask, and that is, what does legacy mean to you?
As you look at where we want to leave the world and how we want to be, someone had me write my obituary the other day, and I thought, well, what a great practice, right? It was this, as people, line up around your casket, what does you want them to say about the man that you were, right? The kind of life that you lived. And I don't know that, it's changed from where it was when I was a younger man, right? The things I have, the accomplishment I have, I want it to be more about the man I am, right? The way I am with others, right? The other people in my life where I supported, right? It wasn't about my financial, the houses I have, the cars I have. It's none of that. Today, it's about the people I serve. And there's the thing I never realized is I could never, ever feel, no matter what I had. I've made some great money. Look, what's great about this work is if you do the work in business, you show up. And really, when you practice these principles in all my affairs, right? When I start to look at the inventory that I am as a man, like if I go look at my life and my inventory, and then I go look at the character defects of my inventories, right? And really work on those character defects. Like, all right, I can't walk around and be a great business leader if I want to walk around and cussing like a sailor. That's not going to work, right? You can't hire people and talk negatively in business meetings and expect that you're going to grow great people. Then, if I really work on how I am with the customers and the relationships I have, right? If I practice those same things in my life, right? How do I treat my neighbors, right? How does my house look? Right? If I start with my bedroom and the way I make my bed and the way that we clean the house, and we start with those small principles, and then we practice those things and go, all right, where are the character defects in the way that I live here at home? Well, am I practicing financial stability, right? Or am I on Amazon all day long buying all the crap I don't need because I can go unconscious? Oh, I saw this on YouTube and now I need that. Look, there's a million things I never knew I needed till I see it on the internet. All of a sudden I'm like, I need that. No, you don't.
Yeah.
I've got so many things today. I'm practicing not having things. And our world is built on things, right? Things.
Yeah.
And if I look at my financial stability, how am I spending in my home? What are the principles that I'm following? Not that I can't have nice things. I mean, I'd like some nice things, but today I practice when to do that, how to do that in a conscious way, right? In a really conscious way. Like, do I need that or not need that? And did I really think that through, or was it an unconscious buy? Because I would say most of the things I've ever bought, I mean, even in my greatest states today, I go unconscious still today, and I buy things that I don't need. And this is a great book I just got done reading. It's called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership.
Nice.
And they talk about this this imaginary line, right? And like when you're below the line, you're a victim, a villain. You're in this kind of negative energy space. When you're above the line, you become, a hero. You become a coach. You become, the ability to serve others. And I would say that after reading the book, I realized I spent a lot of my life below the line, right? This kind of fear-based mentality. And just every once in a while, when I do good work, I get a chance to be above the line and see how I can serve others, maybe how I can be a coach, right? And in that, I get a real sense of esteemable acts that feel better and ultimately have me, live better in a different way. So I think that's a real important thing for us to look at. I thought it was a great book. It's yeah.
We're going to add that. We're going to add that book into one of our book of the month, one of these months coming up for sure.
Good, great
Man,
book.
we had such a great conversation today, Anthony, that maybe there was something we haven't spoken about, but if there was one thing that you'd like our members to take away with today, what would that be?
In this now period that we're coming to, more important than ever before, to stay conscious, to stay as conscious as we can. And what I mean by that is physically conscious, right? Sobriety, sober, really staying in the spot where it's okay to be uncomfortable, right? It's okay. It's okay that you're going to go through it. Be uncomfortable, right? Same thing with emotional sobriety, right? Watch out for the fears, fear, anger, and anxiety. Anytime I'm mad, it's always my fault, right? How I react to life is and what's coming up is when I stay there, what I know about men, what I know about us is that we are the most creative, people that we can count on. And the world opportunities for us and our families will be so damn abundant that it's the right spot to be in. And, just stay away from checking out, right? If we could help our other brothers in that same spot, stay as conscious as we can. And from there, we'll find, just an enormous amount of happiness.
Perfect. Well, that is outstanding. I just want to say thank you so much, Anthony, for spending time with me today. And I think we showed that, even through some of the things of masculinity, like grit and determination, that we can still achieve our dreams and do great things in the world if we remain conscious. And so if men or anyone were interested in getting a hold of you, maybe get involved with some of the work that you're doing, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Two great groups, Men's Living. You can find it up here. Todd and his group have done an amazing job called Men's Living. You'll find their logo. It's a circle. It says Men's Living on it. The other one's MKP, Mankind Project. Another great group around the world, worldwide organization that bring men together and some great practices for that. And then you can get a hold of me anywhere at Future Factory. Please come see my podcast. It's we talk about the future and AI and kind of where we see the world and men going as we look forward to the future. So I'm grateful to be on your show. I really want you to know I love your show. The work you do is amazing and it's abundant, and I get a great nugget out of every one of them.
Really appreciate that. Well, I'm going to make sure I put all that information in the show notes, as well as links to your business, just so somebody, if they're really inspired and they want to reach out and have a chat with you, make sure they can do that. I just want to say once again, thank you so much for being on the show. It was outstanding conversation.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.